Ladies and gentlemen, as we speak, Sheikh Hasina is getting ready to spend a second night in her safe house at the Hindu Air Base in Delhi. In Bangladesh, tempers have calmed down a bit. Educational institutions have reopened, but tectonic changes are underway. The parliament has been dissolved by the president. Khalida Zia, the main opposition leader in the country, has been released. The army's top brass is being rejected. Let's put out some more pictures of the chaos that we saw yesterday. Those pictures are from 2 days ago. In 21 days of violence, 440 people have been killed. The anger against Sheikh Hasina is so intense that even her father, the country's founding father, was not spared. The pictures on your screens. Needless to say, what we are seeing is a rather unglamorous end to one of South Asia's most iconic political dynasties. Sheikh Hasina's sons have made it very clear that she will not be returning to politics of Bangladesh. So the question now is, where is Sheikh Hasina headed? UK, of course, is the favorite refuge of deposed leaders. Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif cooled their heels there before returning home. Hasina had the same plans. Delhi was supposed to be just a stopover, a brief one. Her sister Sheikh Rihanna is a British citizen. Her niece Tulip Siddiq is a British MP, so it made sense for Sheikh Hasina to go to the UK. But certain uncertainties have hit her London plans. She is now contemplating other options after the British government indicated that she may not get legal protection in the UK against any possible investigation. UK, on its part, when asked, kept it pretty vague and cited immigration rules, saying, and I quote, "There is no provision for someone to be allowed to travel to the UK to seek asylum or temporary refuge. Those who need international protection should claim asylum in the first safe country they reach." Point is this the UK telling Sheikh Hasina to please stay in India? Then, of course, there's the United States of America. Point is, her visa, her diplomatic visa, will not be valid anymore since she's not in office. And therefore, the big question this evening, where does Sheikh Hasina go? For the moment, it seems she will be staying put in India, which has granted her an interim stay. The External Affairs Minister today told an all-party meeting that Sheikh Hasina is in shock and that India will give her time before asking her about her future plans. Now, Ms. Hasina has spent 6 years, and let's put some pictures of Sheikh Hasina on our screens as well, please. Ms. Hasina has spent 6 years in India in exile after her family was massacred in 1975. But back then, she was a young woman who needed help and protection. Can India afford to host Hasina again? Can it give her asylum, given that it will impact relations with the country that we share a 4,000-kilometer very porous border with? We will talk about that in just a bit, but let's first hear from what External Affairs Minister has told Parliament today.
There are an estimated 19,000 Indian nationals there, of which about 9,000 are students. The bulk of the students, however, have already returned to India in the month of July on the advice of the High Commission. We look forward to their normal functioning once the situation stabilizes. Chairman, sir, we are also monitoring the situation with regard to the status of minorities. There are reports of initiatives by various groups and organizations to ensure their protection and well-being. We welcome that, but will naturally remain deeply concerned till law and order is visibly restored.
Okay, there's some breaking news that is coming in. Top government sources are telling Network 18 that Sheikh Hasina has been asked to stay in India till she gets political asylum. We are being told that India will give her time to get asylum. Till a final asylum is granted by any other country, UK or Finland, Hasina will be staying in England. Let me go straight across to my guests who are joining me this evening. Dr. Yukteswar Kumar is the Deputy Chairperson of the Conservative Party, Bath, UK, joining us on the broadcast. Veena Sikri is a former High Commissioner of India to Bangladesh, joining us on the broadcast. And Suhasini Haidar is the Diplomatic Affairs Editor of the Hindu newspaper. She's joining us on the broadcast. So, Hasini, I'm coming to you first. What are you hearing? It seems, that the External Affairs Minister of India has told all political parties that Ms. Hasina was shaken when he spoke to her, and therefore India will give her time. But it seems that her stay in India will be longer than was originally planned.
Certainly. And the External Affairs Minister had the all-party meeting in the morning where he took the parties into confidence. He then spoke in both houses of parliament, making the case. Look, Shreya, at some level, this is stating an obvious reality. Sheikh Hasina is in India. She is an old friend. She's a traditional friend. It's a family that has had this traditional friendship with India. There's no question of turfing her out. So until she's able to get a final okay on where she can go next, obviously she will stay here. I don't think that should surprise anybody. And that India would give her time is certainly expected. The government has not said, and we have been trying to ask them whether Sheikh Hasina asked to stay in India and whether the government considered that. Clearly, that would be very awkward for New Delhi as it tries to engage the new government in Bangladesh, as well as it would lead to, given that India has an extradition treaty with Bangladesh, it would lead to other possible outcomes India would like to avoid. What we're hearing is that in the last few hours, since the UK has made it clear that it is less likely to accept Ms. Hasina's request for asylum, on those grounds that you mentioned over there, that you can't apply for asylum from outside the UK. So there's a technicality also that she has already stopped in one port, which is safe, and therefore she should first apply for asylum in India, is what the UK seems to be saying. And more importantly, there were certain guarantees of safety and of non-prosecution that perhaps Ms. Hasina was looking for, that the UK is not willing to give by making that strong statement calling for a UN-led investigation into the events of the last 2 weeks. The UK is making it clear it wants to give no quarter to Prime Minister Hasina for the actions of the past few weeks. What we're hearing, as I said, is as a result, the net is being cast a little wider. We're hearing countries like the UAE, Dubai in particular, as well as Saudi Arabia, which, like the UK, have often seen South Asian leaders take exile in. And as well as the places you mentioned where she has family. She has a sister and a niece in the UK. She has a nephew in Finland, in Helsinki. She has a son in the US, and of course her daughter is here in India. So those would have been the first options for her. But perhaps now she is it's being made clear that she has to cast that net a little wider. There will be countries looked at where where Prime Minister Hasina had good ties, as well as, I presume, her Indian hosts will be able to make a case for her.
So a bit of a catch-22 situation here for India. Dr. Kumar, why is the UK not very keen to have Sheikh Hasina? The statement that has been issued by the United Kingdom makes it absolutely clear that she should stay put in India and not bother coming to England.
Well, as you rightly yourself said, Shreya, that UK government does not have these kind of provision for someone to be allowed to travel to the UK to seek asylum on temporary refuge. If they were coming as an illegal migrant on a small boat using false document, or a forced visa or something like that, sadly, that is what is the 2022, 2 years ago, the UK House of Lords Libraries research paper says. So it also says that the person who is seeking asylum, they should stay in the first safe country. And by all means, UK recognizes that India is a very safe haven, and we are known that when, as you are saying right now, when Dalai Lama in 1950s, he sought asylum, India gave, despite since then India-China relation, because I'm sitting in China now for some work, and China was irked. Now, but we know that India follows Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and history goes to say that this, our great land, which is India, has never turned back anyone. Now, UK understands this. There has been historical regions, and in 1950s we granted asylum to Dalai Lama, as I said, and with then in 2000, not only Dalai Lama, Karmapa, when that at that time I remember I was in Beijing, and in 2000, Karmapa, the other Buddhist leader from China, he fled to India, and India gave asylum to Karmapa as well. So UK government understand that India is safe.
Okay.
It is not an unsafe country like many other nations on the earth. And that's why I think UK is, because of the laws, would like to say that, okay, you are already in a safe country. There is no need. Although we all know that Madam former Prime Minister of Bangladesh, she has so many kids and kin in the UK, including her sister's own daughter, Tulip Siddiqui. She has been a Labour MP for last 9 years, since 2015, and she is also a Treasury Minister. It's another matter that she is under investigation herself because of not revealing her all rental income.
Okay, Veena Sikri, but will that argument hold? If a country wants to give asylum to a deposed leader, they will give asylum to a deposed leader. The fact is, UK did give asylum to someone like a Benazir Bhutto or a Nawaz Sharif as well. So if they can do it for these two, they can certainly do it for Sheikh Hasina.
Well, I think if you come closer to Bangladesh, the former Prime Minister Begum Khaleda Zia, her son, Tariq Rahman, he's been living in UK for the last 15 years. And there are cases against him in Bangladesh, which have been run for the last, and there are judgments against him, which including very serious penalties for his role in the Chittagong armed forces and others. And certainly the Bangladesh government has, under Sheikh Hasina, had raised it to the UK government, of course, with no reply. So there is a complete example of double standards here, that, the present request by Sheikh Hasina is being regarded very negatively, but others have happily lived there. You mentioned two examples yourself, Benazir Bhutto and Nawaz Sharif. And now there is also the example I'm quoting of Tariq Rahman, who is, of course, now longing to come back to Bangladesh now that the Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is no longer there. So I think that in addition, I think as far as her saying in India is concerned, this is perfectly all right. I do not see any kind of an impact in that sense on future relations with Bangladesh, because, India takes decisions on its own. It's not going to look over its shoulder at other nations or what they are going to say and how it's going to impact them. But I think, the visual that you are showing of the virulent attacks on Sheikh Mujib's statues and portraits, I don't think this is a question of venting anger against Sheikh Hasina. This is a question of an attack on the values of the liberation war that Bangladesh has held dear for the last 52 years. These are not students who are doing this. These are members of the Jamaat-e-Islami. The students' quota reform movement came to an end, I would think, virtually on the 21st of July, when the Supreme Court accepted the appeal by Sheikh Hasina government. Actually, Sheikh Hasina's government and the students were on the same page all along. There was no clash between the two. So that it was Sheikh Hasina who abolished the quotas in 2018. And when the High Court reinstated, she went to Supreme Court. So I'm saying that actually the question is somewhere else. The group that's coming into power, we are seeing a slight tussle now between Dr. Mohammed Yunus as being the chief and the Jamaat-e-Islami group that also wants to be the chief of the interim government. We are seeing a tussle at whether Tariq Rahman will be allowed to come back to Bangladesh, or will the Jamaat-e-Islami prefer to keep him out of Bangladesh, because coming back then there would be similar priorities between the two.
Okay, give me a moment here. I just quickly want to go to Salim Samad, who's a senior journalist who is joining us from Bangladesh. I quickly want to get a sense from him about what is happening in Bangladesh right now before I come back to all of you. Salim Samad, first things first, have things quietened a bit on the streets of Dhaka as we speak? Because there were reports that that educational institutes have opened, though attendance was low. Is that something you can confirm for us?
I think you are very right. Number one, the streets are empty since morning. The schools have opened, but of course, yes, you have mentioned that the attendance is very, very low. Similar with the government office, the banks have shut down at midday. So I know about some of the issues. Yes, it is true. And the students, the protest movement, they have formed committees in all the district towns to look into the law and order because there is an absence of police. The police has vanished. The police have gone underground because of fear of public lynching, and possibly more than 30 to 40 police were killed by the rioters. And yes, so one of the reasons the police have even gone on abstention from work because they cannot go for a strike. They've already declared to go on abstention. And only 2 hours before, one very senior diplomat from the Indian High Commission called me and mentioned that the embassy, the High Commission in Dhaka, is sans, and there's no police not guarding the High Commission, not guarding the other embassies, which is all around in that enclave. And of course, the residents are all unsecured. So you can understand the fear that has been in absence of the police. But coming back to there are less violence, less.
Mr. Samad, can I then ask you? Okay, can I then ask you, you're saying that the police has absolutely gone missing. Can I then ask you, given the fact that Sheikh Hasina right now is in India, is in New Delhi, is there any sense of anger against India on that count on the streets of Bangladesh? Or do the students and the Jamaat simply don't care where she is as long as she's gone?
Jamaat is not in the street. That I can ensure. And whoever is talking about Jamaat Islami, they do not know the background of Jamaat Islami and the strength of Bangladesh. They have only 4% vote in the entire Bangladesh of 80 million people. Okay, let's come into the point. Yes, there is an anger of distrust and suspicion against India for the long, long time. And this has happened because of the misrule for the military regime earlier, and of course the other regime. And it also carried on with the Sheikh Hasina, because Sheikh Hasina has always been branded by most of the people here in Bangladesh, even the media, and of course the opposition, I mean the Bangladesh Nationalist Party. But she is pro-Indian.
Okay.
So whatever the conspiracy theories are still very active. They also said that the firing of the students on the students, which has killed 300 people, 300 almost 60% were students were killed. And those persons with the rifles were from India. So this is, everybody is believing. And it is very difficult to debunk such rumors. So obviously, when they find the Hindus who are a soft target, they have been attacked. And of course, the Awami League, who are also a soft target because there is no police to guard them, to protect them. So obviously, that has happened. And this is happening for the last couple of decades. So this is nothing new. But this time, it seems it is the anarchy.
So you are telling me
arson has manifold on the last 48 hours.
Okay, so you're telling me, you're telling me a couple of important things right now as we speak, and Suhasini just come in here. A, that the police has completely gone missing, including from the diplomatic area in Dhaka, which means that the Indian embassy is unguarded. You're also telling me, the senior journalist from Bangladesh, Mr. Samad, is also telling me that minorities are being attacked, and we have also seen pictures of at least a couple of temples being vandalized. So, Suhasini Haidar, then in that context, I ask you this question. Can India afford to keep Sheikh Hasina on its soil for long? Veena Sikri saying koi farak nahi padta, but farak padta hai to the Indians who are in Bangladesh, given the anti-India sentiment on the ground right now.
Well, it's in India's interest to help ensure there's a return to peace and stability in Bangladesh, working with the army, working with all the stakeholders. One of the problems, one of the big criticisms of India on those streets, and we've been speaking to people in Bangladesh, is not a knee-jerk hatred of India. It is very simply saying that India must show it as a friend of the Bangladeshi people, not of any one leader or one party. It must engage all stakeholders. What has happened has clearly taken our government by surprise, or you wouldn't have had this kind of strange scenario where a former head of state, a respected leader in India, is simply there at a safe house, having to land in Ghaziabad, and then for 2 days we don't know where she's going to go. So clearly we have been caught off guard, perhaps did not know how bad the situation was. But clearly we're also unaware of why protesters have been unhappy with India. Now, he spoke about the police. I think the scenario is that there is tension between the police and the army. The police have, in fact, gone on strike in many places. One of the reasons was that the police was actually seen as carrying out Prime Minister Hasina's orders for a crackdown on the students. And and the army has been seen as trying to hold its fire, refusing to use bullets, refusing to even use pellets on the protesters.
Correct.
So there's a little bit of internal politics over there. Finally, and you have to unpack in a scenario where there's little information coming out, so much violence on the streets and so much anger, one has to unpack each of these and not allow them to become one large, sort of sensationalist kind of scenario. When it comes to the attacks on minorities, there's no question there has been a targeting of minorities, that those numbers have gone up as well. There's no question that amongst the protesters that you're seeing there, amongst those mobs are not just students. There is a political component. There is the Chhatra Shibir, the Jamaat-e-Islami's youth wing. There are other groups that are involved over there. There are radical groups that will be involved. One of the problems with the kind of political, almost exclusive political structure that Sheikh Hasina had brought about in the last few years is that everybody is ranged against her and is outside of the system. And therefore, you're seeing a kind of, panoply of various grievances coming out on the streets at the same time. The important and immediate real priority is to somehow work with those who are now forming the next government. I want to urge you also that the pictures that you are showing, that television is showing again and again, is not happening. So it's better if we look at pictures that are happening right now to get a better sense of just how bad the situation is, or whether some of it has actually come under control. And I think it is important to de-link, in a sense, this idea that everything that is happening inside Bangladesh is actually a reaction to India. A lot of it has to do with the kind of government that Prime Minister Hasina did run over the last few years. And while she has been hailed for her counter-terrorism, for the real push she gave the Bangladesh economy, for ushering in an era of relative secularism and religious tolerance, she has been criticized rightly for shutting out the opposition, for putting so many activists, leaders, journalists in jail, and for trying to suppress any kind of dissent. So that's what we're seeing as the backlash too over here. And there's no question that others have used these protests to carry out their agendas there. The important thing is to bring all of this lawlessness under control as soon as possible.
So things are quiet. Just to tell our viewers that things have quietened on the streets of Dhaka. That is something Salim Samad is telling us. Salim Samad, just come in here. We understand that things have quietened down in Dhaka. My question to you is really about the army, because Suhasini has brought that up. The fact is that the army chief is married to a second cousin of Sheikh Hasina. They were known to be close. Sheikh Hasina was very clear that to quell the mobs, if you need to open fire, open fire. The army resisted doing that. They didn't do that. In fact, it was a 45-minute chat with the army. It was the army that convinced her to leave the country. It was an army plane that got her to Hindon and stayed here for 16 hours and then left for Dhaka once again. I want to ask you why the army decided thus far and no more, as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned. I'm not saying they abandoned her. I'm just saying they refused to go along with what she was saying.
Yes, you have correctly said. Actually, the general, he just been promoted to the army chief only 2 months back. General Walker is the nephew of Sheikh Hasina, and Sheikh Hasina believed that she will be protected by the military, especially by General Walker and some of the other generals that she had promoted them to very key positions in the headquarters. But let me tell you one thing, which is possibly coming out slowly. The retired military officers, the majority of the former army chief, and many of them from the Mukti Bahini, they had sat in their club. They have a club called the Retired Army Officers Club, which is a huge club. Okay, but doesn't matter. But they had sat there for hours, and then they drafted a speech, and which they led the journalists and read out to the journalists. And they have categorically mentioned that the military is not supposed to get involved in politics. That is not their job. They're not trained to run the country. They're not supposed to handle everything. So the only thing that has been mentioned in that draft, I mean, the speech, then they had spoken to the army chief, please don't listen to your prime minister. She is totally cut off from the people. She has no connection with the people, and the people doesn't want him. So that was very important for decision that she has to take. And that is one of the reasons today, several of the senior most officers in the headquarters has been either replaced or removed, and one has been fired. So you can understand that the military chief is still undergoing a lot of pressure, undercurrent and cross current. And of course, the students have other issues that need to be discussed. So the students are right now in the middle of discussion with the president at the president's house, which is known as the Bongo Bhavan. So we are not sure. They're trying to sort out with the name of the person that they want to see in the interim government. So there are 4 lists. It is very difficult for the students to use. And the students want that the interim government should be headed by the professor, the Nobel laureate, Professor Yunus. So you know that very well. So I am confident that these students are very professional. I would not use the word they're very brilliant students, but they are very professional. And we were surprised that they had different committees among themselves, which was never disclosed before. So overnight, we were able to know because they have different committees, discipline committee, law and order committee. So this thing has happened. So, and of course, you can very well, yes, you're right, that students are in control. That is my personal belief, and I still believe that
they are in control of what? Students cannot run a government, and I think students are very aware of that as well, which is why they are seeking help. The pictures on our screens right now is the immediate aftermath of Sheikh Hasina leaving. So people go to her house, a mob goes to her house, and they carry anything that they see and they fancy, including ducks and fish, etc. Veena Sikri, before I end this show, right now, at least to the outside world, this is a leaderless mob that led this quote-unquote revolution on the streets of Dhaka. The Prime Minister has fled, but the fact is there is political uncertainty. The new dispensation, as and when it comes, right now there is talk of an interim government. What shape it will take, we do not know. We don't have the contours. Eventually there will be an election, and we know that Sheikh Hasina will not be part of that election. Eventually, India will have to choose. Because if you're hearing from Mohammad Yunus, he's already saying that India needs to stand with the country and not with a leader. India will have to choose, and therefore my question, once again as I wrap this show, how long can India afford to keep Sheikh Hasina on its soil?
No, keeping Sheikh Hasina in India doesn't mean that we are choosing in favor of one party or the other. We will always deal with the government of the day in Bangladesh, always. And there is no doubt about it. The government has changed and there's a new government. We deal with the government of the day on all the issues that we were always talking about already with the previous government. Now, that is always there. There are many countries in the world where governments have changed. In the UK, there's a new government. Everywhere, there's a new government. It doesn't matter, but it doesn't affect it. Now, as I gave the example of Tariq Rahman earlier, does it affect the UK dealing with Bangladesh? So I think that, please, let us not think about a situation where a humanitarian dealing with a certain individual by the government of India, whatever they decide. I'm not even trying to say that they will decide one way or the other, or dealing with an individual is going to in any way affect your bilateral relationship with Bangladesh. The policies of the new government, what they follow, as you are saying quite rightly, that Dr. Mohammad Yunus has been saying many things, and so have other government other parties like the Jamaat-e-Islami and the BNP, and certainly we will deal with them. I know that when I was there, when there was a BNP government together with Jamaat-e-Islami, there's so many issues on which I used to meet Sheikh Hasina also. But it's not that I didn't deal with the government of the day at that time, and I dealt with them on every issue. On every issue, security, national, and all issues concerning the border, it was the government of the day you deal with. But it doesn't mean you don't meet other people in that country, people belonging to other political parties, people belonging to other. So I think we have to really differentiate that. We don't allow yourself to be influenced in your dealings with leaders from different parties of the spectrum by the political events of the day. And I think if you do that, it is that country itself which will start looking down on you, because you have to maintain your own national interests and your own principles in whatever you do. So I think this is a very strange situation. And I don't think I would agree. Don't think I agree that.
I don't think the story is as straight. I don't think the story is as straight in the real world that we live in. But Suhasini, before I wrap the show, my last question to you. It's very clear now that the UK is not very keen to take Sheikh Hasina in, which means she stays in India for a bit longer. How long can she stay at the Hindon Air Base? If this is going to stretch into weeks and perhaps a couple of months, then you will need to move her out.
Precisely why I said it's clear that we did not see this coming and we weren't well prepared for this eventuality. I think the idea was that she would land in Hindon yesterday evening, apply for asylum straight away, and there was an expectation it would be approved and she would take off in the same plane she had come on, and which is why originally she was at Hindon Air Base and then we understand taken to some sort of a safe house. I agree with Ambassador Sikri completely that Sheikh Hasina is somebody who is respected here, regardless of what her government has meant for her own country. Sheikh Hasina has upheld Indian interests, even sometimes at the detriment of her own popularity in India, in Bangladesh, as we saw with the Citizenship Amendment Act. I think it's necessary to accord her the full respect due to a leader of her stature, and perhaps, have her in Delhi until such time as something does work out. I think the problem, and I was alluding to it earlier, is if they begin to start processes against Sheikh Hasina in the manner that we have seen in the past, court cases and charges against her of a serious nature, it will put India in a spot because there will be a demand for an extradition, which perhaps New Delhi wants to avoid, which is why perhaps the hesitation, even External Affairs Minister Jaishankar saying that she had asked to stay here for a moment, and making it very clear that it's a temporary request from PM Hasina. But regardless, even when the plans don't work out as originally made, I think it's important to accord her that respect and to have her in Delhi quite openly without necessarily, stopping the engagement that is necessary with Dhaka as well.
So, Hasni, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you very much. Dr. Yukteswar Kumar, thank you very much for joining us. Veena Sikri, good to have you on the show. And thank you very much, Salim Samad, for joining us on Mirror Now. Thanks to all of you.